Thank you very much for staying. Welcome back to the market, please. Now, the rate at which the country's debt stock has been increasing has slowed. That's the conclusion one may draw after going through the latest Bank of Ghana data covering the debt numbers. The debt stock ending September this year reached $139 billion. George Yafe has more.
The data showed that the debt stock has gone up by some 3 million Ghana cedis from June this year to 138.9 billion Ghana cedis ending September 2017. For some analysts, this is a sharp departure from the previous months where the debt numbers were even going up by as much as 3 billion Ghana cedis in 4 months. Sources are attributing it to government debt reprofiling and some marginal stability of the Ghana cedi during that period, which accounted for the slowdown in the rates of increase. The data also puts the country's debt GDP ratio at 68.6%, still within government's end-of-year target of 70%. However, when you look at the country's debt position from September last year to September this year, then it has gone up by 26 billion Ghana cedis. This might not necessarily be as a result of fresh borrowings by this administration, as other factors may have contributed to this increase. However, some are still worried about the country's exposure to dollar loans, especially when government is projecting to spend 15 billion Ghana cedis as interest payments on loans for next year. If the debt is shared among the country's population size of about 28 million, then everyone should be owing almost 5,000 Ghana cedis. The Bank of Ghana data also showed that the country is getting more from exports as earnings reached $10.2 billion in September. On the banking sector, the data showed some mixed results, raising more questions about the soundness of the sector, with loans that banks fear might go bad still rising.
Let's do some more financials. And the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana has cut the policy rate by some significant margins. The committee reduced its key lending rate by some 100 basis points to 20.5% from 21%. Addressing the media a while ago, the governor of the central bank, Dr. ADDISON, attributed the reduction to what he describes as favorable economic outlook for the rest of the year.
As the central bank and the lender of last resort to the financial system, if a bank has liquidity challenges, they are allowed to borrow from the central bank, because that's one of the functions that a central bank is supposed to play. And so long as the bank has the securities to back that borrowing as collateral, we do extend that liquidity support to the bank. I think that the situation has improved significantly from the beginning of the year, where banks were in very serious need of liquidity. At least over the last 2 months, we have not seen that type of pressure coming in. So there are improvements in that as well. Now let me move on to Uche on fragility of the banking system improving. I think the two issues are related. The fact that non-performing loans have marginally improved, I think that improves the issue of resilience of the banking sector. At the same time, remember that we had requested quite a number of banks to put into place recapitalization plans as far back as April.
All right, let's now go straight to the central bank, where our man George Yafe has been covering the MPC meeting since morning, and he's joining us to give us some more updates on the current development. Now, George, if you can hear me, good afternoon, welcome to the market, please.
Thank you so much, Yafe, and we're coming to you live from the conference room or the boardroom of the Bank of Ghana, Yafe.
Now, George, earlier we heard that the policy rate, the new policy rate, is now 20.5%. Now, what other issues have you been picking up from the press conference?
Quick correction, Yafe. It actually dropped from 21% to actually 20%. When we look at it, it has gone down by 100 basis points, Yafe. So it dropped from 21% to 20%. And just a while ago, the governor of the Bank of Ghana actually announced that this is what they have done after reviewing all the threats or whatever a threat that it means to the economy. That is why they dropped it by this margin, Yafi.
Now, what else can can you report on? The public debts?
Yafi, you're right on that one. That was a question that also came up during the meeting, as in what really accounted for that marginal increment in the public debt, despite several borrowing by government. Well, the governor sought to explain that it could be attributed to some policy measures that government is currently or has introduced over the period. You can talk about the debt reprofiling as well. And also for some analysts, they believe that the marginal stability of the Ghana cedi could have also been a contributing factor for that marginal reduction in the Ghana cedi. Let's also talk about the fact that the governor was trying to explain to us, what are they going to change their strategies? Yes, he admitted that there need to be some reviews put in place to ensure that the cedi is firmly stabilized against the US dollar. On the issue about the liquidity challenge with some of the commercial banks, the governor maintained that he believes that the situation has fairly improved, and therefore there might not be a need to step in to up support for the banks. But liquidity support is normal, and if the banks indeed need it, they could indeed come to the Bank of Ghana to actually seek that support. But I know you're asking, what are those analysts saying? And at this time, I'd like to bring in Courage Mate. He is with Data Bank. He is a senior economist at Data Bank. And Courage, let me ask you, what do you make of this reduction in the policy rate that was announced by the governor of the Bank of Ghana just a while ago?
A welcome news to the market because we've seen what has happened to inflation over the last 10 months. We've seen a sustained decline, even though 1 or 2 months recorded an uptick. Overall, it's been to the downside. And what we have seen is that inflation expectations have been very well subdued. The risks to inflation are also being well contained. You know that the currency has been broadly stable, even though in the last 3 weeks it's picked up depreciation marginally. But when you look at the fundamentals that have supported this stability, they are in a better shape compared to a year ago. And then when you look at the fact that fiscal consolidation has also been on track within the expected budget limits, I think, broadly speaking, you could only expect that the central bank will cut this rate to stimulate growth in the non-oil sector of the economy, which has been a bit weaker than expected.
Some will say it's about the expectations and what they expect to happen. Now, what do you think is the Bank of Ghana seeing that we are not seeing, that they believe that it might be good to reduce the rate to stimulate growth and also improve lending to the private sector? If you look at the growth, there's the annualized growth in terms of extension to private firms, it hasn't been that good, even though there's been some marginal increment compared to the month of September and even August as well.
Well, the bank has conducted its measure or gauge of consumer and business confidence index, and with the composite index of economic activity, it's seen an uptick in both business and consumer index. But you also require some amount of monetary easing to support this confidence so that there can be a real investment in the real sectors of the economy. Without a monetary stimulus, that confidence cannot be realized in terms of growth. And if you consider the fact that the main reason why you want to tighten the monetary regime is inflation risk, that same risk is now declining, then you would want to lower or stimulate the real sector of the economy by reducing the policy rates.
Let's come to the governor's response to some of the issues. And another one which I know will stimulate some debate has to do with the public debt. I mean, over the period, we've seen some significant borrowings by government. Government says they are doing what they call the debt reprofiling. But the governor sought to agree with this argument that some of these policy measures has indeed led to that marginal increment in the public debt. What do you make of the governor's explanation to this issue about the performance of the public debt?
Well, I think it was apt. He cited the fact that in the third quarter of this year, we finally paid the first Eurobond we took. And so that would have reduced our total debt commitment. Having said that, I think one thing we also need to understand is that the size and the rate of increase in your debt portfolio takes its roots in the size of the fiscal or budget deficits. So if you run a very wide budget deficit, you need to borrow significantly to continue to fund this funding gap. Currently, we have a primary surplus of 0.2% of GDP. Now, the more you run a primary surplus, the lower will be your rate of debt accumulation. And interestingly, when you look at last year's numbers, the rate of debt accumulation was 26%. As we speak, the rate of debt accumulation is about 13%. You will see that the increase in the debt portfolio has slowed down because fiscal consolidation is gaining roots, and we have arrived at a surplus balance or primary balance position.
So you think that this reaction was in line? Let's look at the pass-through, the transmission mechanism again. It is believed that when the Bank of Ghana drops its policy rate, that should impact on the cost of credit largely, but it's taken quite a longer time for this to happen. Looking at the governor's explanation to this and also your own expectations, when should we actually feel that impact on the market, taking into consideration the repricing that these commercial banks would do? I haven't this rate drop impact on the cost of credit on the market?
Well, there is always going to be a time lag between policy implementation and its impact, particularly with respect to the policy rate. Now, two things must necessarily happen. The first is that the high NPLs, which is about 21% of total loans and advances for the banking industry, needs to come down, because once it comes down, the risk to every capital that is given to business is perceived to be lower, and then businesses or banks can now take more risk by giving out more loans. That is number one. Number two, you recall that we had a history of high interest rate, which has led to a high fixed deposit accounts being operated by some of these debts. So there's expensive deposit component of the bank's total deposit portfolio. Now, these fixed deposit accounts, which were incurred at a higher cost, need to be covered, and they could only charge high interest rates. So once these fixed deposit accounts mature and will have to be repriced at a lower interest rate, then you also see that banks will also reduce their lending rate, because now they have a lower interest cost to cover.
So should we look at maybe by the end of first quarter in 2018 to have this cut being felt on the market?
Well, I am also looking at by the end of first quarter next year, and that is on the expectation that the NPLs would have come down significantly. If you look at the NPLs right now, it's still about 21%, but that's as at October, at which time the ESLA bond has not yet or was not yet done. And so by the time we get into the first quarter of next year, when the new summary of economic data will be published, we should have seen the impact of the ESLA bond on the NPLs, and then we can conclude.
Courage, finally, I want to get your thoughts on development in the banking sector. We hear issues about liquidity stress and all the rest, but the governor is quite buoyant or optimistic about things in the banking sector. Is he again seeing something that we are also not seeing?
Well, I think when you look at the numbers, he could only speak on the basis of the numbers. The fact that there is a minimum, threshold for capital, which is 10%, and currently the average is 15%. Okay. What it means is that there are those who are significantly above the 10% mark, and there are those who are just close to the 10% mark. But if you have an average of 15%, you have more people above that minimum, and that gives the confidence to the governor to be able to speak in that light.
So, yeah, I think that was Courage Mate sharing his thought basically on just a while ago, the governor of the Bank of Ghana announced a new policy rate, dropping it from 20% to actually 21% to actually 20%. So that's 100 basis point, dropping it from 21% to actually 20%. And if you look at the period over the period, this could be one of the significant cuts in just from January. And also, in respect to the 20% mark, that could be somewhere around September 2014, that dropped to about 19%. So there's a recap there, it dropped from 21% to actually 20%.
Much, George Riafe, for that incisive update on the new policy rate as announced by the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank. The new policy rate is now 20% away from the previous 21%. Away from this, let's do some aviation stories. And domestic carrier STARBOW could struggle to regain public confidence in their operations. Those are the views of some industry players that Joy Business has been engaging. These concerns have been influenced by last weekend's incident, which left 5 passengers with minor injuries. This was after the aircraft skidded off the runway at the Kotoka International Airport as it attempted takeoff. For many, this might not be good for the airline, as this is the third major challenge that has hit the airline in 3 years. Let's now go over to Sheila Tamaklo, who is currently at the Ghana Civil Aviation Offices, to get some more explanations to this particular development. Good afternoon, Sheila, and welcome to the market, please. Hello, Sheila. All right, so we're trying to link up with Sheila Tamaklo, who is currently at the Civil Aviation Authority, to bring us up to speed with the current developments, where the Civil Aviation Authority has commenced investigations into last weekend's emergency situation that occurred at the Kotoka International Airport, where STARBOW Airlines skidded off the runway, which got 5 people injured. We will definitely get back to her as and when we get her for some updates. All right, now moving on, President Akufo-Addo has re-emphasized his government's commitment to easing the cost of doing business in the country. According to him, government is rolling out several initiatives that should ultimately create the enabling environment for businesses to achieve this and its associated economic benefits. He was speaking at the maiden edition of the Chamber Business Awards organized by the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
This is the kind of leadership and collaboration that is required collectively to build Ghana beyond aid. And I encourage business people to take advantage of these opportunities that have been created by government. I recall that at the National Policy Summit of the Ministry of Trade and Industry in August 2017, the President of the Chamber, in his remarks on behalf of the private sector, indicated the readiness of businesses to take advantage of government's policies and programs, and underscored the importance of organizing our industries along industrial value chains to identify the linkages and aggregators and ensure that production of goods or products meet the needs of the market. This will result in massive employment, production of high-quality goods, and efficiency in the system. I've been informed that the Chamber has commissioned a team of experts to undertake an industrial value chain project which covers agricultural value mapping and intelligence, aimed at providing bottom-up data and business strategic models to support Ghana's agro-industrial drive. It is a laudable initiative, and I pledge government support and call on other stakeholders to do the same. Mr. Minister, President, GNCCI, and ladies and gentlemen, in pursuance of government's agenda to stimulate the consumption of made-in-Ghana goods and services in the country, the Ministry of Trade and Industry is organizing a made-in-Ghana street fair scheduled for 16th and 17th December at Oxford Street in Osu, Accra. I wish to invite all Ghanaians to patronize the fair. The theme, let's grow Ghana, eat Ghana, and buy Ghana.
Time now to link up again with Sheila Tamaklo, the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, to bring us up to speed with exactly what is going on with the situation where over the weekend, STARBOW Airline skidded off the runway. Now, Sheila, if you can hear me, good afternoon. Welcome to the market, please. All right, sincerely apologies for that. We can't get to you, Sheila. We'll certainly get her in our subsequent bulletins for the updates. Now, CEO of the Chamber of Mines, Suleiman Koni, is urging government to remove the VAT on exploration investment and on some other mining inputs to make the industry more competitive. Now, Suleiman Koni noted more exploration is essential to maximize the country's mining potential and enhance its competitive advantage. Currently, cost of exploration in Ghana is set to be high as compared to other areas in Africa. Sharing his thoughts in an interview with Joy Business at this year's Ghana Mining Industry Awards 2017, CEO of the Chamber advocated a reduction in the barriers to entry to the industry.
One of the things we're talking about in the fiscal area has to do with royalties and the determination, the formula for determination of royalties. We have been advocating what we call a sliding scale, where there are price triggers depending upon the price band, a particular royalty rate would actually apply, such that when the price is high, a relatively higher royalty rate regime applies. When it is lower, of course, then it has to be lower. So that is the kind of fiscal regime we have been advocating. Generally, we have not been talking too much about the corporate tax. It was increased a couple of years ago, and mining companies have not generally, kicked against it as a lot of people would expect. Our issue generally is around the sliding scale for royalty, and we are hoping that once you have the regulations for royalty, which I believe should be in the works, to be one of the things that government itself would consider.
Meanwhile, the Chamber of Mines is also calling for a review of the formula for determining royalties paid by mining companies. Suleiman Koni advocated a new structure that should reflect price differentials on the global markets. Now, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has reiterated government's determination to revitalize the agricultural sector to drive Ghana's economy. He is also encouraging farmers to take advantage of government's industrialization initiative through various flagship programs. Dr. Bawumia was speaking at the launch of this year's Farmers' Day celebration in Kumasi.
This year's Farmers' Day celebration will be a week-long program. It is preceded by an exhibition of agricultural products and innovations. It is under the theme Farming for Food and Jobs. Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, who launched the program, reiterated government's efforts to revitalize the agricultural sector to drive the Ghana's economy.
His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has a vision to modernize and transform agriculture in order to expand the opportunities for job creation and to provide the basis for agro-processing industries. This vision is the outcome of very careful assessment of the fundamental capacity of the Ghanaian economy and in line with our economic history. It is a history that tells us that the massive and sustained investment in agriculture is the surest pathway to accelerated economic development. In addition, the government realizes that promoting agro-industries is a key strategy for achieving rapid industrialization. Every effort is being made to make agriculture very attractive to our teeming youth, especially unemployed graduates.
He admonished the farmers to take advantage of government industrialization initiatives through its flagship programs.
At the end of the fair, it is expected that farmers will be exposed to new technology, new inputs that have the benefit of research outputs, innovative and best agricultural practices, and new opportunities to grow their farm businesses. New investments offered by this platform fuels the already high sense of optimism and enthusiasm that is being generated by government's vision for agriculture.
The Fisheries Minister, Elizabeth Na Afolekwe, reviewed her ministry's initiative of promoting aquaculture for food and jobs.
We need to lift the image of aquaculture as a food product and a commodity of economic value. Aquaculture will also allow governments to redirect foreign exchange resources used in importation of fish to other sectors of the economy for the development of our dear country. It is also worth mentioning that as part of the Aquaculture for Food and Jobs program, we are going to introduce the Youth in Aquaculture program.
Various players in the agricultural value chain are expected to exhibit various products and interact at the Babayara Sports Stadium Heroes Park throughout the week. Prince Apia reporting.
And back in Accra, here is a wrap on this afternoon's edition of the Marketplace. Thank you so much for your company. My name is Emmanuel Apwaji. Good afternoon.